G'day crew, I'm Todd from Toxic Garage Customs. Thanks for joining me. Once again, we've got Clive GMC in the garage. So we've been working on the cab corner. This thing, if you're not aware of this truck, it's had a fair bit of rust over the time. We've done sills on it, we've done floor sections, all sorts of things. Haven't done all of the footage on this particular build, but we're going to be doing a fair bit more on it in the future. This cab corner was completely totaled. It had another cab corner put on it and it was just a mess. And the floor was, and the sills and all sorts of things. So in this video, which is a pretty long one, we go through, we remove the old cab corner bit by bit. We put the new one in, we replace a section of the floor and some bracing and so on. I'm really happy with the way this has come up. We're going to be doing body fill on this at some point, obviously, and we've still got the other cab corner and some other work to do. We probably won't film the other cab corner because it's the same as this one, it's just the other side. Anyway, watch the video. Hopefully you watch it right the way through to the end because you see how we got to this point. But if you don't want to watch the whole thing, just zip through it and watch the interesting parts. That's what I do anyway. So, I'll see you at the end of the video. Well, Doris got her 5 minutes worth of attention. The Inter got its 5 minutes worth of attention. We're going to bring Clive back in and try and do some cab corners. Got a bit of a flat battery issue going on, but we're sorting it. Well, we got Clive, the GMC, in here. And how good does he look? Plenty of room. There's a good 3 or 4 foot behind, or metre or so in metric. And at the front here, we've got a good 2.5, 3 metres, so what's that, 6, 8, 10 feet, something like that, at the front, and we've got some room down the side. The Inter's sort of pushed over, but it's a bit tight, but we've got room. We're going to be doing cab corners, this one in here in particular today. So we've got working room around us, which is good. We'll sort of sort this stuff out. I'm really looking forward to the time when we can just go, you know what, we've got all this space out here as well, and we can use that. So, there's that. How good is it, Sam?
This good.
That good?
This good.
Excellent, that good. Righto. Well, enough chitter chatter. Sam, do some work. I'm going to go and have a sleep. Okay, so Sam's just taking the side trim off the back of the cab corner. There'll be screws on the inside. There'll be little bolts that should undo. So Sam's just taking this corner trim off here. I think pretty sure Sam intends to put all this trim on, or leave all this trim on once this thing is done, because why not? It's pretty funky. Stainless black, bit of wood grain. What's not to love? Bring on the 70s funkadelic. It's not funkadelic, is it? It's more like Chevy Chase Vacation. We've got an aftermarket cab corner here, which is a Taiwanese product, so it should be perfect. And obviously it's not going to have any problems whatsoever. I'm just reading the label here. Rear cab corner, they're good. All sheet metal should be tested before priming and painting. That's always a good idea, you know, like actually weld it on before you prime and paint it. But I like this. Warning, cancer and reproductive harm. So we shouldn't be able to reproduce any more of these C20s. I thought, isn't a replacement panel all about reproducing? So this is reproduction. I don't know, I'm confused. Anyway, so this thing will go on here, like that. So all we need really is some glue, and we glue that on there, and make sure it fitted properly, paint it blue, and we're done. Is that the thing, Sam? Is that what we've got?
Yeah, I think so.
Excellent, right.
Do you reckon we need glue or liquid nails?
Liquid nails would be good, yeah. Yep, okay, I'll find some liquid nails, we'll glue that on, paint it, and done. And this will be the fastest video you've ever seen. Or we could do it the right way. I like the first way better. Sam's just having a look in the cab corner there to see what the outside of the cab corner actually looks like. We're trying to work out how much of the replacement panel we're going to use. just because the replacement panel is a particular size doesn't mean you have to use the whole thing. So just to point out what might be obvious, but maybe not, we've already removed this section here. This was all bent and twisted. When Sam bought this car, it had been all caved in on each side cab corner at the back. Not really sure how, with a forklift or something, I'm suspecting. So it was damaged, and then it had rust and it had previous repairs. And we're going to be replacing along the back there of the cab as well. And we've already released the spot welds to do patches in the floor. So we've got rust repairs to do across the back of the floor still, inside and the back of the cab. And we didn't have the tray off when we were doing this, so we're now working on this because we've got access to it. What we're going to do in the first instance, what Sam's doing right now, is to see what the actual outer part of the cab corner looks like down the bottom, to see how far we're going to cut. Because what I'm considering is that we may be able to just go through, and rather than use the lip that returns into the door area, we may be able to cut that short and use the existing body line. So cut this down through here and leave the return there, rather than try to put this new part here on. And not from a point of doing more or less welding, but because that is an original body line, this one here, and if we go through and say cut down through here or right on the corner, then we don't have to try and hope that the distance from the door to the external corner of the cab corner there is the same distance. Because if it's not the same, it's going to be hard to fit up. How's it look under there, Sam?
Looks pretty good actually.
Yeah.
Really solid all through there.
Yep.
Right the way through there.
Yep.
It's only a real bog on this door line.
Yep.
And probably, it's actually not a whole lot of bog in there, I don't think.
Okay, so
It's a real solid plate.
for our American friends, when Sam's saying bog, he's talking Bondo, body filler. I know you guys call it Bondo, and I know that this being a GMC, and a lot of my audience is actually in America. I appreciate my audience from everywhere, but to talk in a language that you will understand, Bondo. So we're just, before we rush in and start cutting parts out, we're just trying to see where is the best parts to cut off, and then we're going to overlay this panel where it's supposed to go. It won't fit in there at the moment, partially because of this lip, but also because it's bulging out down here. So roughly where this black line is, we're just going to go through and cut some of this off, just so that we can get this to sit in as close to the body as we can, so we can see whether some of the body lines, like up here, some of these body lines here, and this line here, and so on, and this line, whether they're going to match what's on here. Now already I can see that this part on this replacement panel, that seems to be a bit deeper through there than on the original on here. So that there looks to me like it's not going to be a perfect fit right from the start. This looks like a sharper line. See this here, Sam? See how that's quite a deep ridge, whereas here it's quite a shallow ridge?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that might cause us a bit of an issue. And that's the sort of thing, before we go hacking stuff off that doesn't need to come off, then we'll work it out. We may end up only coming up to along here, because that part there is not much good, but across here might be better. So we'll look on the inside, the outside. I can see body filler Bondo just here. Now this whole car's had a workover at some stage. Anyway, enough chitter chatter. We're going to start assessing, cutting some stuff off, trying to get this thing to fit up as best we can. Sam's just gone through and just roughly cut out some of this. He hasn't gone through the second layer, because as suspected, this is the original cab, and that new panel has been lapped over the top of it. The new replacement panel that had been put there before we have been here. And I'd like to know how far it goes up, because there's no point patching over the top of the patch over the top of the patch. There's clearly body filler through here, which is reasonably thick. So I would like to, we're just going to grind some of the paint and body filler back here to try and find out where the lap is, because it's not obvious on the inside. So this steel comes down, the new comes over the top, it'll be welded along here and body filled. So we're just going to go through, grind off and expose that so that we can replace as much poor stuff as we possibly can, is what it comes down to. Keep as much good stuff as we can, preferably original stuff, and replace as much poor stuff as possible. Even if some of the replacement stuff is in good condition, we may leave it there or we may cut it off. It just depends what works out. So it's a go in slowly, not make regrets of cutting too much off, rather than go in hack, tear, bust and then regret taking too much off. So Sam's going to go do some grinding in a minute. Okay, so what we've done there is we've exposed where the weld is. So Sam's pointing to where the joint is, and we haven't ground right the way across, but we've now determined that it goes there. I'm just going to zoom in a bit. So can you point to the weld, please, Sam? So you can see some weld there. It's been lapped over the top of the cab corner, the original metal, so it comes across and it keeps carrying across. So Sam draws a line. That's where it comes across, around the corner. And then I think it actually comes down a little bit lower there, just above where that trim was, just sort of around there somewhere. And I'll go inside the cab for a second. It was hard to determine that in the first place, but now that we've found that weld, there is some black. Let me zoom out. Where that black is, it's actually welded through here. So this is, I don't know what, some sort of paint. So it's welded through there. So it's not really obvious here because it's been body filled on the inside as well. So we're just going to cut that whole corner out. There's no point leaving some of that old stuff there when we've got a full cab corner here. That is pretty good. So Sam, would you like to just hold that cab corner up in place? So we'll have a look at that. We may end up literally using the entire cab corner, or we may just cut in from the edge a little bit, but looking at it, at this point in time, I can't see any reason why not to use the entire cab corner. So we're going to cut off a great bulk of the bottom of what's there in the first place to try and get this thing to sit in as closely as we can, and then we'll do the fine-tuned cutting from there, and then once that's done, then we'll put it in. And an ignorant man would say, cut all that off, fit it up, and then weld it in, it should be easy. But I would never say that, because that would just be inviting things not to be easy. What we have worked out we're going to do, we're going to cut off most of this, so we're just going to cut to every one of those lines. So if you can work that out, great. No, what we're going to do, this is where the patch panel that we have actually fits. That's as big as it is, and it continues around the corner. But what we're going to do, we're going to come in about an inch, 25 mil from the edge of that and cut this line. So we're going to leave a flange there, and we'll probably end up cutting it back, but so that we can just sort of fit it up. Around the side here, we've decided that looking on the inside, this corner is actually not too bad up in these upper areas. So we're going to come around here, come down here, and around there, and then straight down this line here. Now that might seem like an odd cut, but the reason being, it leaves these mounting points there, which is no biggie. That's just where the trim goes, and it wouldn't be hard to duplicate. But that piece of the cab's actually in pretty good condition. Also, that trim piece that Sam took off runs through here. So rather than weld above it, we're going to weld behind it, which we're going to still body fill it and do it all as best we can, but it just means that if it does go a little bit wavy or it's not perfect, then it'll be behind the trim item, and it's going to be just that couple of inches less that we have to get absolutely perfect, even though we'll be trying. So we're going to come around here, straight down there like that, and then down here. We'll probably end up trimming that back. This will probably stay, and around here we'll probably end up trimming back as well. Again, creeping up on it. And then by doing that, because we're pretty convinced that by cutting on that line where we are, actually we're going to go up just a little bit above that, because I think we're dead on the line that they cut on, where they welded on. We're just going to go up into clean metal and remove all of that old stuff. Well, when I say we, Sam. Okay, it's not focusing greatly, but hopefully what you can see is that there is 2 layers of metal, one here, one inside with a gap in between, and then equal or even a thicker amount of body filler, which I'm cracking off now. So we want to come up above, and now that we're there I can actually see, I think that weld is just there. I think we're going to come up above those holes, unlike what I mentioned before, because those holes look like it looks like the weld goes between those holes. So we'll put new holes in there for the trim, that's no biggie. So we're going to come through and cut off above that. And in fact, this might be a telltale sign. I think we're going to end up coming up higher, I would say. Even higher again than what I thought. I think we're going to end up coming up here somewhere. And you can see that black line behind there. That's where the weld is, just below that somewhere. That's where we're going to need to cut to. So a bit more cutting, but let's have a look through here. So there is a fair bit of debauchery in here from previous, and again, work before us, but we are responsible for some of it. So we've put this new sill panel on here. We've replaced part of this floor, but all this back section is missing. This brace is just a piece of steel plate. This is supposed to come out with 2 pieces, mount onto the side there. We've reproduced, we couldn't get one when we were looking, so we reproduced the other side. We're going to reproduce all this. It's all rusted up the top here as well. So we're going to fabricate all of that out of sheet metal and make that piece by piece, and we'll bring it right the way across, and it attaches into the inner rocker and the rear quarter of the cab here. So at the cab corner. So back to what we're doing at the moment. We're going to go through and just make sure we've got as much as we can of the old stuff, the bad stuff out. I'm feeling up the top here. This is actually good. You can't see it. There's actually, I can see weld along there. We may need to still come along a bit further than what I even thought. We'll get to that. One hamburger later, we're back into it. So we're working around this part towards the door opening, and this is where those trim pins are. Trying to work out where to cut it, and what we've actually just worked out, Sam's just ground it back. There's lines of weld going everywhere, but there's a patch that's been put directly through where those pins are, and above that seems like original cab metal, and below this you can see the lap. So I think that's original metal. Well, it sort of laps over by half an inch or so, 15 mil, 12.5 mil. So I think we're just going to go through and maybe cut through here somewhere, I think. And then around here, we've decided we're going to use the entire height of the patch panel, which takes us up to their original weld lines there. So hopefully we can cut through and maintain as much of the metal that we need. We just had to go through on the patch panel and just clean up the little corner where it comes into here, just to get it to connect a little bit better. Bless you, Sam. Yeah. We're making progress. What we're going to do, while Sam's cleaning this up, I'm just making some little tabs, and we're going to, after we've found where we want to be, we're going to Cleco, and I've shown Clecos before, but I'll show them again. We're just going to Cleco some little tabs on at various places. So we'll have some tabs onto here and some tabs onto the panel, so we can take it on and off as many times as we want after we've got our fitment happening, because we've got to do a heap of work in here. So we'll continue along with that, but yeah. Sam thought it was an interesting point to point out this, that all there is just a little bit of weld through there, but mainly this is original cab corner through here. We've got to take all this body filler off anyway, because it's not necessary. They seem to have put on quite a bit of body filler in some areas here, and it seems totally unnecessary. I'm not sure why they've got so carried away with it. Anyway. A little bit of time later, we've been creeping up on this little by little. So let's have a look at what is working. What we've done is we've cut the whole bottom of the corner off, and I'll show you in a little while. We've managed to get this to align pretty well through here, and I ran a straight edge through there, and I'll show you. Ran a straight edge through on the sill and through here, and it's not absolutely spot on, but it's pretty good. So it curves off through here anyway, so I'm not worried about that. It's more where this and this align. So that's actually pretty good. I can't close the door at the moment because the Clecos are in there, but the lines are okay. We already know that we've got to lower this line about 5 mil, so just got to put a slice through that, tap it down, weld it back up. That's later. Managed to retain part of the, I won't say original, but the lip that is in here, so that we can spot weld this on, or plug weld it as it will be. Just had to grind back a little bit here to get it to shape around some of the weld. We're not going to use the top part here. It actually doesn't fit very well. You can see from here, we're still sitting on top of the original metal. It's sitting here and then it's bulging out past here. And we know that behind here, the metal's pretty good. So we're going back to plan C, where the side trim actually goes on here. We're actually going to cut this about here. And then we're going to come up into some relatively flat panel up through here and then across to the top. And that's bulging out at the moment. And when we sort of pull that all in, hopefully it will help to start bringing some of these lines in place through here. But we may have to do a relief and extend that out. We're working our way around there. That's behind the tray at the end of the day. Not going to see much of it, but we'll try and get it right. But this is the part that's more in your eye shot. Now this line here is terrible. This is on the pressing. This line through here actually works pretty well as far as the door jamb gap goes, but this line here doesn't work. Now if I was able to close the door, and I don't think I can close it far enough to show you, but I'll try. No, maybe. So what you can see here is that this is the line on the door and the line on the panel is up there. But luckily we're not going to be using this lip on this panel. We're going to cut down here and we're going to weld along here behind the side trim that we took off earlier. So we're going to be going around here. So the line that is behind this actually is down here and works better anyway. So none of it's perfect, but it's got to come up okay. So we've been going backwards, forwards, taking this panel on and off, and we've got the Cleco over there. We did have a Cleco up the top here. We've cut this top section of this panel out, deciding we weren't going to use it. We're going to work with the original body line here, which lines up with the door, and we're welding just below it. Unfortunately, it's not going to be below our trim, but that's just the way it worked out. And we've got this alignment quite good here. Got the Cleco that we keep taking on and off there. So we've done the overlay method. We clamped it where we wanted to, and we got it exactly in line with the best we could, and we've just cut the top one just to make sure there was still metal behind it. When we were happy, gone through and cut below it, so cutting the parent metal to match the panel and vice versa. Now this part here is too long, and that's okay. We're just going to, later on, as a fitment thing, we'll just go through, we'll cut that, just put a cut down there, tap it across, weld it back in, and it'll all be good. The part up the top here that we cut off of the replacement panel was actually quite long, which is part of the reason we made the choice to cut this section off, because that piece of metal on the truck is not too bad and the new panel didn't align very well. Now if I haven't already made it clear, replacement panels never line up, and I'm not being cynical, they never line up. You've always got to modify them. So if you get a panel, don't expect to be able to get it and just put it on. That is not the way it works. So what we're doing at the moment, already checked it out, just got a little cut there. We know where our metal behind is. We're going to go from here up to this point here. That's, I won't say flat, but it hasn't got a overly complicated body line in it. So we've got to go through there. The tray does come right out to here. So anything beyond here, again, as I said, we want it to look good, but it's got to be more forgiving. But this line here is important. So we're going to come up from here up to here, cut that in. And then what that's doing, it's allowing the whole panel to relax and move across into the same line as the metal on the cab rather than sit on top of it, because as it relaxes and moves across that way, it's going to help us get these lines in place, because as it is at the moment, or as it was pulling out this way, and little by little it's going to pull across. I don't think they're going to line up perfectly, but they'll be closer before we have to worry about trying to adjust them. They'll be as close as we can get them. Back onto the angle grinder. Creeping, creeping, creeping. Came up through here, and I've just reliefed along there a little bit. Now what's happening is this is relaxing. You can see that all just wants to pull together now. We're still certainly out over here, and it's not going to fit in there ideally, so we're going to have to do something about this corner to get these lines to line up. But this is coming well. Now we put this panel alignment clip here to get that as good as we can. We want the distance from here across to here to be as close on the money as we can before we go doing these 1mm cuts. We do a 1mm cut and it's a millimetre out. We end up with a 2mm cut, and that's a lot harder to weld. So pretty happy with that. Not welding anything, not tacking anything at the moment. We'll put that off as much as we can because we're going to be taking this on and off. But I am going to take this back off, and we will remove the little piece of metal that is still in behind there. And I'll see if I can show you that. So from the inside you can see that little cut there, and this piece of metal here, I know it's not great light, but this piece of metal here is the next piece I'm going to cut off. So I'm just going to take the panel off, zip that out to get it to fit in better, but that's where we're up to. Okay, so Sam's just finished cutting that. Good job, Sam. It's a bit rough, mate, it's a bit wobbly. So just push that into place, please. So yeah, it's dropped down a little bit after we've cut it, but we've managed to get these lines at the back lining up. But the issue is that what happened was we now have a big fat mark. It looked fantastic, this corner looked really good, but then when we did some reliefs we realised that was moving across and lining up well. So we've made the decision we're going to use those lines, and we're just going to have to fill this big chunky bit here. But we've actually worked out we can get all of these lines to work, and we've managed to get the door jamb looking pretty good. What we're pointing to then, so oh yeah, those lines all through there look really good, and so does the horizontal line across the bottom. Very happy with that. It's just this here that was, doesn't matter how much you try to think about everything, that snuck up on us. So we'll fill that, that's okay. That's what, what's bad Chad say? That's what coat hanger's for. Okay, so Sam's going to take this off, and we will have a big hole to reveal, but it'll be a big hole the shape of this. Now nothing would please me more than to be able to actually jump in there and start welding this in place so that we can go, oh yeah, look at that, progress and all the rest. But the thing is, we actually have a bunch of work to do underneath before we can do that. We've got one more Clico here, Sam. Before we can do that, we'll just let all these pieces fall everywhere they want. And look at that. That is what we have left. And there is a little piece hanging on there. Sam's just got to finish that off. He didn't have earmuffs on then, but that's the first time I've ever seen him do that. So please don't hate us, but put it in your comments if you do. Okay, excellent. Moving right along. What I'm currently making, and Sam templated this, but he's had to duck off. What I'm currently making is some floor braces that it is a cross member that goes from one side of the cab to the other, and then it will spot weld onto the floor. Now it was completely rusted out, so we cut out, well, it was completely rusted out and it had been replaced with something that was far from satisfactory, just a piece of really thick sheet metal. So I'm making this out of 1.5 mil, which I don't know what that is in gauge, maybe 14 gauge or something like that. It's pretty thick. It's not super thick, but it's thick enough. So Sam made up a 3-sided template I've taken one side off, but it was just out of some cardboard, an old folder, manila folder, and made up a base plate. So it's just sitting there. This is the inner sill. So we will be continuing the sill through like this eventually. Just a little bit on the end out to here to the cab corner. So this piece, and now it's got to come up and return that way, come up here with a flange like is happening there. So I'll show you more closely. So it was all rusted and butchered around. So basically replacing this piece that comes here, across here, back up the other side, and then a flange that way. This is rusted out. This is going to be done as a separate piece after this first piece is repaired. But it comes down like this and then attaches onto the inner rocker or the sill, and it will attach to the base of the floor. So I've just been making the two side pieces. I've got one piece made here, which I'll show you in place in a moment, and then I've cut the second piece out, which I've already lost. I think I might have carried it. Yep, so it's over here. So I've got it marked out, and I'll bend that up in a moment. But this first piece that I have, this was all originally one piece of metal through here when this was made, but because I'm repairing it, I'm actually going to overlap some 50 mil, so a couple of inches, and that's going to sit like that. It'll be welded on the inside and out. Obviously that gap will disappear once that happens. It'll sit nice and tightly. This end still needs to be cut to shape as it is at the moment. It's the wrong angle, so it needs to be cut back here somewhere to follow the line of the sill. Actually it's more like that. And then the other piece, which I haven't bent yet, this piece here, it will duplicate, and I can't put it in place at the moment because of the vice grip, but it goes on this side and it'll be flanged at the top and duplicate that. So what it will be is essentially a five-sided, five-angled brace. So it's got a flange at the top, it comes down the side, across the bottom, up, and then back across this way. And rather than trying to make it out of one piece of metal and trying to get all those bends right, making it out of three pieces of metal and just got to weld them together. And the reason we haven't put this cab corner on yet is for exactly that reason. Can get access in here, could cut off the old rusty stuff, can still get in to remove this section up here, which as I said will happen after we put this section in. Can clean it all up, been able to clean up these seams. There's still a bit more work to do, but we'll weld this, pop it in place, probably cleco it in place, and then build the floor and build this section over here, and eventually put the cab corner back in. And we can rust proof and convert and all that sort of stuff while we've got this great gaping hole to work with. Now once again, working with our template, the side pieces are the same from one side to the other, so it's really only the angle that matters. So I know that at this point here that width is important. Through here it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter as long as the angle is right. It doesn't actually matter about the length, so I'll cut it to length after I'm happy with the angle and everything, like the one that is already bent up. And on the one that's bent up, I've got to cut this angle enough and that it's done. So this one I've got here, flange this face. Actually this was off the first one, so I just need to make sure. So this will actually go that way in the car, so the flange actually needs to be on the opposite face, meaning that it needs to bend that way, not towards the right but towards the left. So I need to put it in my bender and do that. Now as it is at the moment, I've got it marked on the side that is not going to help me, so I need to be able to transfer this mark to the other side. What do I mean by it being on the wrong side? You can see that line that I've scribed there. If I put that here and bend that up, it's going to be on the wrong side. The flange is going to be on the wrong side. So I need to be able to see the marks on this side. I could transfer the mark across, but a sheet metal friend of mine, actually a plumber, showed me this, and he does sheet metal work. If I just take my snips just put a little cut on one end and a little cut on the other end, remembering I'm going to be trimming these to length anyway. Little cut there, and all I need to do is look on the other side of the metal and I can see those two little nicks. And now I can just put my sheet metal into my brake. This brake is not really designed for 1.5mm sheet, so I've got to put a fair bit of force into this to bend it as well. So I put that across there, I'll just flatten it out so to get it in. All I need to be able to do is see those two little nicks there. And ironically, the person that showed me this, his name is Nick, and I know that he is my #1 fan. I think he was probably my #1 subscriber, and he's a very good friend of mine. Thanks, Nick. So I'm going to put some force into this and bend it up to a 90-degree angle. Using the International as a backstop. Hopefully I don't dent the bonnet. Now I just need to put a little more bend into that. And now, all going well, I've got a nice 90-degree bend, or close to it, on the right side of the brace. Now that will have just added a heap of strength to that as well. You can see there. So let's have a look, see what that looks like on the car. So this is the piece that I just did. I'm going to have to change the top angle the same as I did on this one. So this will go in here. Now I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get it to work. There, should be okay. That one's going to sit there. This one is going to come up to here like that. It will continue on through here. I've changed the angle of the flange a little bit by the looks of things. And I've just got to dock that to just here and put a little bend in it like I have on the other one. So then we will have a nice strong brace. So we'll change the angle of this a little bit so it ties in with this. Get that to sit a bit better. And do that. I decided to go through and re-bend this because I made it a bit short in the side and it wouldn't line up properly, but I'm happy with it now. So I just straightened it out, flattened it out and then re-bent it. So that sits in there like that. It leans over, so it's not a 90-degree angle there, so it leans over. This flange isn't quite as wide as that one, that's okay. It just goes on under the floor as long as I've got something to spot weld. And I've just put a pen mark there because what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a pie cut out of the back of this so that this will lay down in the same way that this one does. So this one, I've got the vice grips there now, it lays down like that. So this one, I'm going to take that pie cut out, take that out, tap that down, weld it back together, and then that flange will change direction but continue along here. And again, I'll spot weld that on. So I'm going to cut that. Then I will I'll cut that, and then I think I will cut and tack, and not tack in, clamp in place a piece of the inner rocker so that I can work out the angle to go on here. We're getting there. I no longer have very strong wrists, so I actually am leaning these onto the plate and I'm just pushing down, so I don't have to try and squeeze, I'm actually just pushing my weight against that to cut. I don't think there's anything miraculous about that, it's just what I need to do. As you get older, these things catch up on you. I don't know why I've got weak wrists. Okay, made a pie cut. Just got to flatten it out in the first place and then I'll bend it to the angle that I want. Old piece of railway sleeve, oh sorry, what's this? This is a piece of RSJ or steel beam, C-section. RSJ is an old term, they're called now. I'll weld this together. It's lovely. Let's just sit it in. A little bit twisted. It'll be okay with some welder and grinder. Like that. Sit like that. I'll bring that in there, roll it all up, boom, onto your uncle. I'll just final tune up once it's in place. I'm going to sort this inner rocker out. So we've fabricated these braces, put all the flanges and everything on. We tacked it while it was in place to keep the shape, and then we've taken it off again so that we can get to it better with the welder, and put a bit of a cross brace through, just clamped a cross brace onto it through here just to hold the shape, to stop it shrinking. So Sam's just going along and welding it inside, making sure that he gets plenty of strength, and we'll then have a look at the outside, and if there's any gaps we'll put a bit of weld on the outside as well and maybe round the corners off. But this has come up really well so far. It's night time now. Night time's the right time to drill holes. So this is that brace. Sam fully welded it up and it's come up really well. We've trial fitted it, and then Sam's just drilling a million holes to put spot welds in. So for the floor, to other spot weld holes to attach it to the existing brace that's there. Some here to go to the inner rockers and so on. We'll get all those drilled, we'll give it a clean up, and then I think we'll just throw some sort of primer, some sort of protective paint of any description in there before we fit it up. So over here I've gone through and just been cleaning up where it's going to attach a bit. It's still a bit pitted and so on, but I'll clean it up a bit more with a wire brush. That's just Sam punching some holes there. But also this piece up here on the cross brace that we're repairing the end of, it was rusted out on the top, and rather than go cutting out too much of it, what we're doing is we're just repairing the section that's rusted. So going to try and beat up a piece of steel to match it. Now what I've done here is sort of the paper mache masking tape trick, and I've put over probably 6 or 7 layers of masking tape and laid them one direction, one the opposite direction and so on, just like if you were doing paper mache for a school project or something like that. And the reason being, if I carefully take it off and pop it back, it will hold the shape somewhat. It'll hold the shape of what I've just made. Now, it will hold the shape well enough. I've taken it off. I'm going to get some dirty fingerprints on the back of it so it stops sticking, and then I can mould the shape again. So I'll just get a little bit of dust and stuff, put it on here, just off the ground, just to stop it sticking, just so I can work on the shape a little bit more. But you can see that's what I'm repairing. So I'm just going to cut it out through here somewhere, and this piece here. So just got to sort of make up that section, and it's a little bit of a complex shape, but
trying to get these little impressions in it and this part here, because presumably that's what it's meant to look like. And then after that, then we're going to have to build an extension of the floor. And if you're wondering why this is all so angular and cut to pieces, this floor was horrible. It had been tacked together 1,000 times. It's got all surface rust and that over it from even the work we've done. But we've tried to repair around parts that were intact to try and maintain the shape. Now we did the same over here, and what we've ended up with is something that looks like the original floor. But we had to do it in lots of different pieces because there was braces underneath and braces on top, and there was swage lines and mounting points and so on. So just doing it in pieces. There's a million other ways to do it. We couldn't actually get a floor section at the time. This was probably a good year ago now. But it's working. This is one of the cab mount bolt points here. So we had to reconstruct one over the other side. We've done some work from underneath, some work from the top. So let's have a look. We're going to make this piece up and try and get it as good as we can. That was a pretty good result. It's pretty late now, so it's time for us to wind this up. But we've got that brace that we fabricated in primer. This is just so that we know where our inner rocker panel is going to go, just to line that up. We got that piece there in. You saw a fast motion thing of me beating that. It's not an exact representation of what was there before, but what it does, it just comes across as part of the brace, replaces the weld section. There's a couple of bolt holes that'll need to go in for the fuel tank, I think it is, maybe the seat. Still got to do a bit over there yet, obviously the back, but that's okay. We needed to get this piece done so that we could get this piece ready. So this can now be spotted in various places, and it will be good. We're going to spot in from the inside in some spots, the outside in other spots. It's come up well. Very happy with that. That's a really solid piece, that brace. And we're going to continue on with this most likely tomorrow, because it is quite late. Got this cab corner just fixed in place, and been concentrating on trying to get the best fitment that we possibly can with the cab corner and with the cab that we've got, and then all the various sections of the floor. Because it is a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, this car, it is hard to know what was right, what was wrong, what was modified, whether the aftermarket panels are good, bad or indifferent. So we're just trying to get the best we can. It'll come out fine, it's just trying to get to that path. So there's a bit of miscutting on this panel trying to get it right, but what we have got is that we've got this line here, good, this line good, this line, this line. So as it turns out, the panel aligned quite well with the body. So I didn't think it would. I didn't think that was going to work, but it's come out all right. Now around the side here, what I had originally tried to get fitting and was satisfied with the way it was fitting was this corner here. But then as things revealed themselves, that corner's opened right up. So that was a boo-boo on my part, but we'll sort it out. What I'm looking at the moment is this flares out quite a bit here, and this tucks in a fair bit. So it feels to me that either this needs to come in or this needs to come out, or a combination of the two. I'll worry about this as a completely separate thing. That'll just be a little patch that we'll put in when that time comes. What we have around here, and I have shown this already, but what we have around here is that the line where the sill is, where the sill joins the cab corner, quite happy with that. So it needs to pull in a little bit, but other than that, it's quite good. This here is also not great. So it's out too far here, it's out too far here, and it's in too far here. So if I wanted to squeeze it, if I push that, actually it's not going to do it because it's caught, but when I align the panel sometimes I push this in and this pushes out. But it means that the panel is going to be under a bit of stress before I weld it. And, some advice that I have heard and been given is that if it's not going to fit before you start welding, it's certainly not going to fit properly after you start welding, and you're just asking for distortion problems. So I want to get it fitting better than that. I'm going to get it fitting better than that before we start welding it in. What we have around here, let me just lift this camera up a bit. Is I've got it clecoed in down here, so that's just a point that never changes. I keep putting it back to that point and then trying to adjust it from there. It's puckering out up here and it's got a bit of a funny shape through here. So what I'm thinking to do is to put it on the shrinker, on my stretcher shrinker, but on the shrinker part, and just try and shrink this through here to pull this in. So I'm going to play around with that first, and then what I'm thinking is back here, this part here, I'm thinking that I may need to stretch it through the corner at the back here just to try and put some more metal into it, make the metal thinner to make it stretch out, to try and contour out to here. So we'll see. I may end up having to relief this and bring the two together, but I'm going to try stretching this first. But first thing I'm going to do is trying to shrink this. I'm also going to put some reference marks on here because it takes a little while to line it up. I've also been playing around with a panel in the floor here, and I'd previously shown the work on the brace, and I've just spotted that brace in that you saw me making not that long ago in this video, and that little patch panel over to the side here, excuse the light, and we've got this floor panel in the corner here. It didn't fit great, still doesn't fit great, and it's got to be patched into the rest of the floor and so on. But it's got some shape and some contours to it that are the starting point to be able to attach other stuff to. So I've got that in place. Took a fair bit of trimming just to get that in there so that I could get the cab corner back in place. But I'm pretty happy with it. It's a long way from finished, but it's a road towards that. Let's start shrinking this little cab corner bit. I've got this piece of the floor corner in. I've just got it plug welded in a few spots here and a few spots there to the brace that we'd fabricated. So it's got some strength in it now. Got that piece in. I'm just going to have a look, see if I need to do anything more to this while I've got access. I might clean it up and just put a couple of extra welds on it. It's got plenty of strength, but why not? There's a bit of a gap underneath here. I might try and get to the corner while I've got access before I put things back in place here. I've still got to put another section through here, another section of the rocker, which I will do after I've put the cab corner on, I think. So I'm edging my way towards this. I'm taking this very slowly because it really is hard to determine what's what, who's who in the zoo, and where it's meant to be. So I've had the panels on and off a number of times, just trying to make sure that I don't box myself into a corner. But I think I'm pretty much right now. I've got this here. I think I'll go through and just check some stuff in here, and I'll double check, but I think then I can start putting the cab corner on, which will be great if I can do that. So that's how it's coming up. Bits and pieces, but it should all come up fine. Well, I'm pretty sure I'm ready. I've given everything a really good clean up. I'm not ready because I need to clean up along here more. I'm not quite ready, so I've got to give that a little bit more of a clean up, but other than that, I've given everything else a really good clean up. So all around the perimeter of the panel, inside and out, so that I don't get rubbish drawing through the weld. I've done some patches inside. There was some cut through areas and a few little rust holes and so on. So I've cleaned that up. I'm trying to get this as good as I can within reason before stitching it together. So this around here, cleaned it off. One thing on this car I've noticed is there's a lot of oil or something all over the underside of it, I guess as a rust preventative, and whenever you weld it just draws through. So I've tried to clean it up as best I can. I'll do that outside, and then we're going to put this thing on. The patch panel, that is, the cab corner. Now I'm ready. So all around here, where the original or the old patch panel had been lapped over, there was a heap of tack welds, which is normal, and then there was all body fill. The tack welds hadn't been joined, so there was gaps in between them of probably about 1/4 of an inch, so about 5 mil. And then there was all this body fill, and it's a strange body fill, but anyway, so it was all in there. So there was no way I was going to be able to weld to the body fill, and the little lumps were giving a extra thickness to the steel, which was going to make it hard to line the panel up. So I've ground all that back. I just spent quite a while on it, very carefully, but what I did notice was every one of those little little tack welds was dry. It had no penetration whatsoever, so it didn't have enough heat. So it was literally just holding the panel in place, and then the body filler was probably the thing holding it together. So I'm happy to have cleaned all that off. I'm really satisfied that it's clean inside and out. I'm going to change the wire. My compressor will turn off in a minute. I'm going to change the wire on my welder as well, so it's a 0.6mm wire, which will mean that I'll need less heat to melt that welding wire, which means less distortion. That's the theory. Let's see how I go. Okay, so that's gone well. I'm happy with that. As I said, I changed my wire from 0.8 of a millimetre down to 0.6, and I'm sorry, I don't know what that is in gauge, but it's thin. It's very thin. It's pretty much the thinnest MIG wire you can get. I haven't welded with 0.6 before, so I had to play around with my settings a bit, and I'm pretty happy with it. I can't turn the heat down any further, the amperage down any further on my welder. That's as low as it goes, and I think it's okay, and I think I got the wire speed okay. The reason I've changed to that wire is I can give short jabs of enough heat to be able to melt the wire and get the penetration, and it's putting almost no heat into the body panel. Now, this isn't rocket science. A lot of other people do this, and I learned this on YouTube. I'm not a welder, I'm not a body person, so I'm learning like you may be. I'm really happy with it. I don't believe there's any distortion in that whatsoever. But what I'm now going to do, because I've got a sore back, I'm going to stop for the night. And when I get back to this, I don't know when it'll be, it may be tomorrow, but when I get back to this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind each one of those welds down so that I can continue along, and I believe that that will give me less pinholes, and I will have less build up that I've got to grind down. There's obviously this big chunk over here, that's okay. There's a little bit of misalignment there, but I've got it tacked the top of it and the bottom of it. It's not really misalignment, it's slightly different body shape from the patch panel to the vehicle. So there's a bit of a step through there, but I am confident that just with a little bit of manipulation, without moving the top or the bottom, I'll be able to bring that across. Now obviously I've got to patch a piece in anyway, so I'll make a little piece. I'll probably open this up a little bit more, make a little piece that's sort of just perfectly symmetrical. I might try and beat a little bit of a contour into it. Not might, I will beat a bit of a contour into it to blend in with this internal curve here. And we'll tack that piece in. I'm going to go really, really steady with that, like I have with the rest of it, because I think that's the one that could bite me on the bum if I'm not careful with it. It could change the shape of everything. But to recap, 0.6 wire, very steady, not rushing it, super happy with it, it's coming up really well. We have a cab corner, and there's going to be, at this point, would appear to be minimal body work to get it right, and that's the result that I'm after. Always trying to improve. Okay, so I've got all this spotted in, tacked in I should say. So if you've seen any of this sort of welding before, it's never pretty, that's just the way it is. So really I've just worked my way across. I tacked it about every inch, so every 25 mil in the first place, very, very carefully making sure that everything stayed in alignment, and that was earlier on in the video. And then I've just gone through and I've done 3 or 4 tacks, one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other, and then moved along to an area further along. And after I've done that about 3 or 4 times, I've blown it down with air, and I kept laying my hand on it, and really there was so little heat in this at any point in time that I wouldn't say I wouldn't burn myself, but it only took a real little bit of air to cool it down. So what that does is control the distortion. Now time will tell, but I can't feel any obvious distortion in this. Now I'm just about to grind the surfaces off these. Over here there was some pretty fat joints. There was some pretty fat joints in a few spots, and there's still a patch I've got to put in over here, which I'll deal as a separate thing. These, I did use a little bit of filler rod to fill in the holes at the same time, but in reality I ended up just putting a tack on top of a tack on top of a tack. Now the trick is to not get carried away and try to do too much at one time, because it's really easy to just keep tacking and then distort the metal. So it's a patience game. what you do find is that you start building up on top of the old weld, and rather than keep going with that, trying to fill in the pinholes, it's best to just stop, grind the surface off and come back for the pinholes. I can see something over here, and if I put a torch behind that, there'd be pinholes all through it. But what I'm going to do is go through and grind off the surface, again being careful to control the heat, because the grinding process itself puts a lot of heat into the metal, and you could distort the life out of the metal. So I'm going to take that carefully as well. Grind it down, put a light behind it, find all those pinholes, which there's going to be lots of them, and then I'll go through and carefully tack those up and then grind it off again. And then we should be pretty close to being able to just work on this part here and calling that a job. I'm going to very carefully start off with a flat disc on my 4-inch or my 100mm grinder here, and just to knock the surface off as fast as I can. I've got a 36 grit on that, or 40 grit maybe, 40 grit on that, and I'm just going to go through and knock the top off as fast as I can, again to speed the job up, but also so that I don't can keep putting heat into it for an over extended period of time. Then I'm going to go through with various smaller discs on my grinder, my little angle die grinder, and I'll start off with a 36 grit, and then I think I've got some 60 around somewhere as well, but I'll work it down to 80. What I'm going to be doing is working on the weld. I'm going to not grind the metal off the patch panel or the cab at all. So as soon as I see myself touching that, then I'm going to back off, because I would prefer to put a smear of body filler to fix the imperfections than to grind off the parent metal, because it'll just make it weak, fatigue, and I'll end up with cracks in my joint, in my weld joint, and I don't want that. Okay, it's always a little bit hard to show this up in a video, but what you just saw me do was grind that back with a 36 grit disc, flat disc, and then a 36 grit wheel pad on my die grinder. I'm not going to take it back any finer than that, because 36 grit will allow body filler to stick to it really well. Now, just as a final run there, I've gone through here, so don't think that I've gone through and ground parent metal off to clean the weld up. What I actually did was I ground the welds down as best I could, and then I've just feathered it back through here so that I have something to bond to and so on when I do the body filler, but also just to blend it in. Now, I'm going to sand all of the panel back when it comes to the body filler anyway, with 36 grit, but I'm happy with the way this has come up. This line's good. It's as good as any other line on the car, is probably the best way I can put it. And when we get that in filler, it's going to show waves, because that's just the way it works. But that's what body filler and epoxy primer's for. Up here, the telltale signs that it's not distorted is that when you're sanding along, so I was using the edge of the wheel. When you're sanding or grinding along, I'm just taking off the weld, and then when I lay it flat, just to feather it out, if I can see the edge of the weld, then it means that it's got some buckling in it, and when you start grinding and you're seeing the parent metal grind away, then you know that it's bulging out there. So just here, for example, I could try and grind that off, but that's like a whisker thin, and it's going to have some body filler, because up here it's still, I don't know, a good millimetre thick, and we're not going to go back and strip the entire cab back. That's not what this project is. You can see some orange pearl in the paint here and so on. We're not painting this whole thing, we're going to touch it up. And I think Sam may even do a bit of a patina, faux patina on it, so we'll see. We're still trying to get the bodywork as good as we can. So when I'm running over this, I can feel that's bulging out a little bit through there. I'll get on the hammer and dolly, see if I can tap it in a little bit. Every time I go to video here, there's some animal or motorbike or something making noise. So I'm going to try and tap that in with a hammer and dolly, but at the end of the day I've got the benefit of some thicker body filler up here that'll blend it out. And those quite fat welds that were over this part over here, they actually came up really well. So same thing, everything I just said a moment ago. Blended body filler and so on. But we're good through there. I've got to go through and spot weld on the panel, the brace for the floor pan that comes into the back of this. So you'll see some burn marks through here at some point in time, once I've spotted that in. And I've still got to make up this piece here, which I've already started bending a piece of steel for it, but I'll bit of metal for it. And then just inside the door jamb here, this is an amalgamation of 5,000 different pieces that have come together. So there's a new inner sill, there's an outer sill, this is what was already there in the first place. And we've gone through here and cleaned it up, and it's coming up alright. There's a bit of copper in here, or braze. Got to fill a hole down the bottom here. So we'll probably just fill that with weld and grind it, rather than try and put sheet in there. But all of this will have a smooth of fiberglass body filler over it to fill in any little pinholes and so on. And then it'll have body filler, and then it'll have epoxy primer, and then it will have paint. So all of this will disappear. Not being hidden, it'll all just disappear, but that's all metal in there, and any of the body filler will just be to clean it up. So very happy with the way this has come up, and I think Sam is too. Are you happy, Sam?
Yes,
very happy. Sam is happy. Excellent. In between the motorbikes riding past, I'll talk. So I've just got a little scrap piece of metal here, and I'm going to cut it and shape it to go in here. It's only going to be a thin, narrow slither, but it's got some contour this way, through here, and then it curves around. So it's going to take a little bit of shaping, even though it's a small piece of metal. I was trying to find the piece that I cut off of this originally, and I can't find it. Otherwise I'd use it, because it would have some of that continuous curve. But that's what I'm about to do. So I'm going to use my mini anvil here, and I'm going to use my sandbag, and a variety of different mallets and things, whatever, just to try and beat some shape into it. So let's do that. Okay, nearly there. Bit hard to film, so I didn't. But I held a torch behind the behind the panel, and I looked for little pinholes, and you can see where I've done a bunch. So on the bottom right hand corner is that patch panel I just put in. I haven't ground that yet. But while I had the welder in my hand, I went through and looked for pinholes. So I'm going to grind the surface off those. Be careful not to go too far. Take out anything that I want to leave there. And I think we're pretty much right. If it's not obvious, a really good reason not to throw parts out that you cut out is because you might have telltale holes. For example, the holes in this piece came from here originally. Actually, I think it came from down here somewhere originally. It has the holes to put the clips on for this. Now I'm not sure where the other bracket is from this. Sam took this off and it might be floating around. But we need to put the holes in. So I had located it, and there's a pilot hole I've drilled there and one there. And that was by sitting this trim in place where it's supposed to be. And just sort of putting some little indicative marks there. And then also just sort of working out where that went. That went about here somewhere. And then I sat this in place and drilled the holes. So the pilot holes, all I'm going to do now is just enlarge those holes. Now the holes appear to be quite a bit larger than the actual stud itself, which will allow for some adjustment. So there's a reasonable amount of adjustment there, so as long as I get it pretty close, then it should be fine. So that is what I am about to do. I'm going to enlarge that hole, sit this trim in place, make sure it looks right, and then we're pretty good. And I've pretty much done all of the body work here. I've gone through and pinhole filled a couple of times, and as I said, I'll put some fiberglass body filler over it, and it'll all be good. Then we can shape, paint, do all the good gear. And there we go. So that last little bit of trim piece that is on there needs a little bit of panel beating. It's a little bit bent out of shape. That'll be fine, won't be hard to do. I found the other clip, so it's got 2 clips on there, and it's come up quite well. So again, the cab corner is all but done, other than body fill. Very happy with the way it's come up. And as a reminder, this is some of the parts we started off with. And what we had there was lapped panels with a fair bit of body filler, pretty average welding, and lots of other bits and pieces. So what we've got is definitely an improvement on that. We've still got the other side, other cab corner to do yet, but it is not as bad as this one, so it should be not too hard. I'll just quickly show you on the inside. We've definitely still got more to do on the inside. Obviously there's a piece of the floor missing, but hopefully you can see that we're putting the pieces back together, and we've got some areas, some lines that we can work with. Again, we're working in terrible light here, but it's all coming together. I've just got to spot in the floor to the cab corner. I just realised I haven't done that yet, so down here. But I just went through and just very quickly ground off the back of the welds there for where we did that panel, for the main reason so that I could go through and hammer and dolly it just to take a little bit of a bump out. But you can see there what we've got. Got good penetration. Okay, certainly not attractive, but it does the job. And this is down in that area where we just put that trim item on. So altogether, it's come together quite well. Still got plenty of cleaning up to do, previous welds and so on, but overall I have to say it is a good result. I'm going to call that here. And there we go. So that last little bit of trim piece that is on there needs a little bit of panel beating. It's a little bit bent out of shape. That'll be fine, won't be hard to do. I found the other clip, so it's got 2 clips on there, and it's come up quite well. So again, the cab corner is all but done, other than body fill. Very happy with the way it's come up. And as a reminder, this is some of the parts we started off with. And what we had there was lapped panels with a fair bit of body filler, pretty average welding, and lots of other bits and pieces. So what we've got is definitely an improvement on that. We've still got the other side, other cab corner to do yet, but it is not as bad as this one, so it should be not too hard. I'll just quickly show you on the inside. We've definitely still got more to do on the inside. Obviously there's a piece of the floor missing, but hopefully you can see that we're putting the pieces back together and we've got some areas, some lines that we can work with. Again, we're working in terrible light here, but it's all coming together. I've just got to spot in the floor to the cab corner. I just realised I haven't done that yet, so down here. But I just went through and just very quickly ground off the back of the welds there for where we did that panel, for the main reason so that I could go through and hammer and dolly it just to take a little bit of a bump out. But you can see there what we've got. Got good penetration. Okay, certainly not attractive, but it does the job. And this is down in that area where we just put that trim item on. So altogether, it's come together quite well. Still got plenty of cleaning up to do, previous welds and so on, but overall I have to say it is a good result. I'm going to call that here. So what do you reckon? We're at the end of the video. What do you think? Came up alright? I'm really happy with it. We got more to do to this truck and that'll be in future episodes. It might be the next one, it might not be, but you know what? You come back, see what I'm doing, and then you'll find out. So if you like this content, please like, comment, share and subscribe. If you want to see more on this, make a comment. If you don't want to see more on this, make a comment. I don't mind. I've got the International, I've got the Datsun, I've got everything. So see you next time. Enjoy, stay safe, enjoy the weather.